What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Babbles Nonsense podcast. We are just catching up and recapping May's Mental Health Awareness Month, talking about autoimmune diseases, elimination diets, and lasering off my eyebrow tattoo. Stay tuned if any of this intrigues you. All right, guys, welcome back. So I just wanted to kind of catch everyone up on what's been going on, and then just recap the past few podcasts since May was Mental Health Awareness Month, which I'm going to be completely transparent. I didn't even know that until Alicia had reached out about being on the podcast, and she was like, hey, because I've mentioned on the podcast before, I would love to have a therapist on. God knows all the stuff we talk about definitely need therapy. And she was like, yeah, May's Mental Health Awareness. I was like, oh, awesome. We got to get you in. So 3 weeks ago, I had my friend Kayla, my high school friend, who's a life coach now, a great one at that. And she's obviously a female entrepreneur. Had to have her on the podcast where she just talks about how she got into life coaching, the difference between life coaching and therapy, and where one maybe can help versus the other one. It just depends on the person and where they're at in their life and what they need. And then the following week after Kayla was Meenu, who is an energy healer, and obviously a very good one. If you have not listened to that podcast, I highly recommend. She talks about chakras, Reiki, karma, and just divine intervention, how it was with us, because after the podcast, I just felt so inspired by what she said and the work that she does that I was like, you know what? I want to work with you. And she was like, awesome. Like, I'm actually starting a boot camp. It's condensed into 8 weeks. You can sign up today and we can get started next week. And I was like, done, signed, sealed, delivered. You literally just sold me on the interview, which was not planned. I just knew of her through a friend, and I watch her Instagrams, and she just has so much wonderful life advice, just talking about the universe and being positive and all the energy we hold within ourselves and how to get rid of it. So definitely check that episode out. And then last week was Miss Alicia Winkle from Pearl Behavioral Health Services. She's the therapist that let me know that it was mental health awareness, which is odd because I didn't know that, but I had already lined up Kayla and Meenu for May. So I was like, well, that's perfect. You've got to come on in May too and just talk about therapy, why it's important to you, why everyone should go to therapy and not worry about the stigma or like what people say, because it's not what you think it is. I think a lot of people see movies or TV shows and they're like, well, I just don't think therapy's for me, which it may not be, but you won't know until you try it. So those were 3 wonderful podcasts that I think can help in any point of your life, if wherever you are on the spectrum or whatever you want. If you want help and you want to accept help, and maybe you don't like therapy, but you're more into the universe, then maybe the energy healers for you. Let's say you also aren't into therapy, but you need someone to like stay on your ass and get after it. You may need a life coach. But if you just want someone to walk you through life and help you understand it from that perspective, then you may need therapy, or you can do all 3 like me. I don't have a life coach, but I do go to therapy and the energy healer. So I am doing 2 right now for the next 8 weeks, and I will report back after the boot camp and just talk about everything we learned and go from there on that. So the other update, which may be boring to some, but nutrition is really important in my life. For those that don't know, I used to be a macro coach, huge into nutrition. And what got me into nutrition, like I always cared about it since probably age 15 when I was in home ec class. My home ec teacher was very into health. Her brother had died of brain cancer at a young age, and they traced it was a very rare type of cancer, and they traced it back to a cereal he was eating. So she just taught us the importance of like homegrown food and vegetables, and that really stuck with me. And then which I've spoke about on this podcast a million times, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but I do have some new listeners, so just wanted to explain a little bit more in detail. So when I was 24-ish, I think, is when I've got my thyroid, or got diagnosed with my autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which obviously is very common in the United States these days. So many people are diagnosed with thyroid conditions or misdiagnosed. So if you think you're misdiagnosed, shout out to or holler out at me. And we'll talk about that. Anyways, so I got diagnosed with my autoimmune disease right in a period of my life where, looking back, I didn't know. So autoimmunity, like some people genetically are more predisposed to it. Like you can or you can't. And they say, the research says that like when you get your autoimmune disease, it's usually in a very high period of stress in your life. And that could be stressors on your body physically, mentally, emotionally, anything. So at the time when I developed it, looking back, I had, I was working night shift in a huge ER, which was a very stressful place to work, not to mention like not sleeping, because every time I've worked night shift, I just do not sleep during the day. And then I had just gotten my breast implants. So I also talked on this podcast about removing my implants, probably 2017, 18. But what I didn't know, which I recently learned listening to the Skinny Confidential, him and her podcast, she just recently got her breast implants removed as well. And she had the plastic surgeon who removed hers that has now become a breast implant expert, breast implant illness expert, where he now does a lot of explants. So definitely go check out that podcast and that episode. It's amazing. And she explains it way better. But anyways, on that podcast, they talk about like after the implants are removed and the whole capsule and everything is out and you've removed something that is causing inflammation to your body, you now need to detox your body, which is something I didn't do because I didn't know. Things like infrared saunas where you're like, apparently the infrared light like actually warms you up from internally. So you actually push out toxins like heavy metals, yada, yada, yada. Is that true? I don't know. I just read stuff and then I try it out myself and see if I notice any difference. So infrared sauna is lymphatic drainage massage, where you're actually massaging all the lymph out and pushing it out so that you excrete it and you waste it. Other things like just being in the direct sunlight, taking supplements if you need them, eating healthy food. So long story short, getting back on the nutrition. So I really became very interested around age 24 when I developed my thyroid condition, because I was like, maybe I can fix this. Maybe I can reverse it through my diet. So I read every book known to man about autoimmunity, diets, inflammation. Oddly, I guess it wasn't out at the time, but if it was. So Dr. Will Cole has a book called Inflammation Spectrum, which is what I read recently. So now I'm doing an elimination diet. That's where I was going with this the whole time. So if you don't know what an elimination diet is, it's literally just eliminating all inflammatory foods. I don't like to call foods good or bad, because once you've labeled it in your head, it becomes this whole other thing. And there's science on that, so go read on that. But essentially, he recommends, so there's a core 4 and then the eliminate 8. And he recommends if you're just doing this like because you feel like you're a little inflamed, but you don't really have, stomach problems or autoimmune conditions, and you're not trying to like solve any mystery, then the core 4 would be good for you, just to see like, does this actually cause problems? And that one to me is pretty easy because I do the core 4 pretty much on a daily basis, with the core 4 being that you would eliminate grains, and that means wheat, corn, quinoa, rice, so no grains at all dairy products. So you would have to look at ingredients to see if there's milk or cheese or anything ingredient wise that would contain dairy, and that includes your whey protein because that's dairy, and then all added sweetener. So obviously no sugar, no monk fruit, no stevia, Splenda, whatever else is out there, none of it. And then inflammatory oils like corn, soy, vegetable oil, canola oil. I'm not getting into why those are inflammatory. I have to tell my friends this all the time, and it's like, I thought this was common knowledge, but guess it's not. But again, this is not telling anyone what to do. This is what I'm doing for me and trying to hopefully continue years later to get my thyroid back on track and get my inflammation under control. But then the eliminate 8, you would still eliminate all 4 of those: grains, dairy, all added sweeteners, and inflammatory oils. And then you would eliminate the next 4, which would be legumes. So anything like peanuts, chickpeas, beans, obviously, nuts and seeds, and that means every nut and seed, like almond, walnut, pecan, sunflower, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, all of it. The next one being eggs, and that means the yolk and the whites. And then the last one would be nightshades. So that's anything from like white, yellow potatoes, eggplants, tomatoes. So then so this is where it gets tricky. So with the nightshades, tomatoes obviously is nightshades. Tomatoes have always caused my stomach problems, so I was like, oh, that's fine, that's easy. But then when he goes into his explanation, he's like, no, that means everything with tomatoes in it, like chili pepper, paprika, what's the other one I use? Curry powder. And I'm like, no, like I cook with those all the time. Anyways. So basically you get a day to eliminate everything. So he says not to do it all at one time. So it takes the course over 8 days, but I'm just like, okay, let's just get it all one time. Let's just do this. Just to help. So basically for the past however many years, so almost 11 years, I guess, that I've had thyroid problems, my medication was stable at one point where I was just on one dose. I had no symptoms of thyroid problems, symptoms meaning weight gain, fluid retention, fatigue, hair loss, constipation. I didn't have any of those symptoms, and I was on a medication that they no longer make anymore because the hurricanes destroyed the place where they make it, and I guess it's just not coming back. But I was on that same medication for years, and I was fine. And a lot of things with medications, if you are a thyroid patient or you're just interested in the knowledge, a lot of the fillers they use in medications for thyroid patients contain stuff that thyroid patients just shouldn't be having because it causes inflammation, and then you don't absorb your medicine as well. But anyways, I clearly have not been absorbing my medicine as well since that medication is no longer on the market, and they just have to keep increasing the dose. So much so that the pharmacist called me and was like, Miss Grimes, do you realize this is a high dose? I was like, yeah, and my labs are still low. And I talk to my friend Adrienne about this all the time because she's developed a all-women's telehealth clinic here in Huntsville for hormones and thyroid balancing, which shouts out to her. Y'all all go follow her. It's Cove for Women, and the 4 is the number, so Cove number 4 Women, and she can help you out for sure, so go follow her. But anyways, that's why I'm doing the Elimination 8 diet currently, and he recommends if you're doing the Core 4 to do it for 4 weeks, and then the Eliminate 8, do it for 8 weeks. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I'll make the full 8 weeks. Is it possible? Yeah, maybe. But I'm thinking logically in my head, why not 4 weeks if that's what the Core 4 does? Because it takes, a good 28 to 30 days for foods that you've had to eliminate completely out of your body if it's causing you inflammation, especially gluten. They've tested it now in people where it's been in their body for months. It's insane. So that's why I'm doing it. And I am technically on week 2. This would be week 4 if 2 weeks ago I didn't decide to have cauliflower pizza from Maud's Pizza Place. And I was like, I just can't beat this craving. So the second time around has been a lot easier. Oh, also forgot to mention a given that's not on the numbers, but coffee and alcohol are completely eliminated during the process as well, because those can be inflammatory and disrupting to the gut lining. Guys, I did not think that for $1 million or $1 million you could get me to come off coffee. And it wasn't for the caffeine aspect of it. It was literally, I just loved it in the morning. It was this warm drink. It was very nostalgic for me because my grandma gave me my first cup of coffee. It was loaded down with bukus of sugar and milk, and it was delicious. But I just remember that was a moment that me and my grandma had. So it's just more the nostalgia for me. But I actually came off coffee other than decaf. I do my, what's that thing called? Nespresso, decaf, like 1 cup in the morning when I get to work. And, it's been a week total with no caffeine. So actually, I think that's when I was like, I've been having caffeine anyways, and I think I had wine, and I was like, go ahead and have the cauliflower pizza, and we'll just start all over tomorrow. How about that? So that's what I did. That's what I'm doing. I'm on week 2. I will let y'all know how it goes. And then obviously the reintroductory phase where you just have to reintroduce all the things that you eliminated one at a time, 3 days apart, because it can cause 3 days, or it can take 3 days before you have a symptom if you're going to have a symptom. And the obvious ones clearly are having to do with the gut. Like if you're having stomach pain, your stomach's upset, you're gassy, bloated, belching. Those are the obvious signs when you've eaten something that, just doesn't sit well with you. But what's not so obvious, which I didn't realize, was like runny nose, or you cough a lot after you eat, or migraines, things like that. Don't take me into too much detail here because there's obviously other things that can cause those as well. I'm just saying. But enough about that. That's what I'm doing currently with the diet situation, and then I will update y'all. But what's making the diet situation the most hard is that I also follow a macro plan, and my carbs are up really high. So when you've eliminated like basically rice, quinoa, oatmeal, all the things, like it's like, how am I supposed to get my carbs? So I'm eating a lot of sweet potatoes. Shouts out to Danielle for giving me some sweet potatoes from her garden. I'm eating out at literally at a house and home on that. And then I had to change my eggs in the morning to sausage, and protein powder from Ritual thankfully doesn't have a sweetener in it. So, but anyways, I digress. Moving on to the topic of the day that I get a lot of DMs about is lasering my microbladed eyebrows off. I did this maybe 2 weeks ago now, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. It was not an easy decision. So if you're thinking about doing this, obviously it's something that you would have to think about, because your brows are going to go back to the natural brows that you had. And some people don't have eyebrows, and that could be very shocking, because I have very thin blonde eyebrows, and to be honest, they grow too far apart. That's why I got microblading in the first place. I always had to dye my eyebrows a darker brown just because of how blonde they were. It looked like I didn't have any. So obviously that's why I got them microbladed. And when they were first done, they were great. The hair strokes were there. The color was perfect. But they were a little bit too, I'm trying to bold, I guess, for me, just because I don't wear makeup on a daily basis. I'll put eyeshadow on and stuff when I go out sometimes. And then that's when they looked their best, because it looked like I had also done my eyebrows. But then, when you're just getting up to go to work and just applying mascara and lip gloss, and it looks like you've got up and done all this to your eyebrows, to me, it was just too bold. That's just my opinion. And so Kayla at the Brow Bar, I've watched her work. I've known her for a long time. It's so natural. It's so gorgeous. And I'm like, Kayla, can you fix my eyebrows? I just don't love how bold they are. And she was like, no. I mean, I love how honest she is, but she was like, no, they're just too bold. I can't correct that. You need to either get them lasered off or try to fade them down, and maybe I can correct them. So I tried the fading process because I just didn't want to put a laser on my face at the time. Clearly I've had laser tattoo removal before, but then I was just at the time, everyone was like, oh, it can scar, you can't fix them. Anyways, I didn't want to do that. So I went with Hannah at Glitter and Mall. She was already my esthetician, and we were just she was in on this conversation because Kayla works over there with her, and she was like, well, you're about to do your round of chemical peels. I'll just put it over your brows. We'll try to chemical peel them down, fade them down. And in between, when you can do your retinol, just put retinol over them, and let's just try to fade them that way. Well, that was I got them done 2017, 2018, I think. And I think maybe I waited a year to tell her. So maybe around it was before COVID. So it had to be 2018, the end of 2018. And that's when we started the fading process. And they were already starting to turn from a brown red, which is what they were when I microbladed them. A year later, they started becoming this grayish black. So that was another reason I didn't like them. But, yeah, so we started the fading process, and they faded pretty well. I think this is the most they've ever faded to this year, so 2023, when we started fading them in 2018. And I went and consulted with her a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, what are we thinking? Can we get these redone? Can you fix them now? And she was like, I'm just going to be honest with you, they're too square in the front. This one comes over too far. And she was like, I think how faded they are, you should just go hit them with the laser 1-2 times, and I will fix them. I was like, you think I need to do that still? And she was like, yes. And I was like, well, maybe in a couple weeks. She said, no, tomorrow. So I was going to see my friend Tracy anyways. My friend Tracy works at Advanced Life Clinic. She's a laser technician there, and I trust her, which is something you need to interview your technicians wherever you go and just make sure they're reputable. Look at the reviews, make sure they're not burning people, make sure hair's not coming back. Just do your research. So I trust Tracy at Advanced Life Clinic. And I was like, what do you think about lasering my eyebrows off today? And she was like, for real? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. It's been 4 or 5 years in the making. I talk about this every year. Let's just go ahead, nip it in the butt, get it over with. So we did. So we just went in there. It was a 5-minute procedure. It was, it hurt, sure, but not terrible. And they, before we lasered them, she basically prefaced me hey, just so you know, we're going to obviously laser the tattoo around your eyebrows. She was like, but know that if I hit some hairs, which I'm going to do my best to, spare as many as possible, she said they will turn white. The pigment will be completely gone. And that's because obviously you're putting a laser to get rid of pigment. It beats up pigment, and you're putting it on a reddish brown blonde eyebrow. It's going to turn it completely white. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Let's do it before I change my mind. So we did. Clearly, I had a bunch of eyebrow hairs that turned white, and I had no mascara on that day. So for those that don't know me, I have very blonde eyelashes as well. And I sat up, I had this headband on, had white eyebrows and white eyelashes. And I was like, what is this? Well, I guess this is what we are right now. But just waited 48 hours for it to heal. So obviously do it on a Friday, then sit at home for the weekend, waited my 48 hours for them to heal. And then I just put my eyebrows out on my eyebrows, and they look completely the same, except they're still too far apart. So, and also because of the ink, it was a blackish gray that we talked about. Sometimes that can turn into a red orange, and mine did. So mine turned into a reddish orange. Obviously, you have to wait 8 weeks between treatments, and we're going to see at the 8th week if I'm going to need another session, which Tracy said it typically takes 1 to 2, depending on if you get that orange color. And if you get the orange color, then she has to go over with the red laser that gets red ink. And then hopefully then it will be gone, and then Kayla can fix them to her, perfection that she is. So yeah, that's what I did. Hopefully I will get both of those girls on the podcast to talk about, obviously permanent makeup and, what can go wrong. She even says, I'm not perfect. Not everyone's going to like what I do. And that's just what it is. People don't always like something, or maybe it just doesn't fit your style in several years. I know I have gotten tattoos in the past that I loved at the time. And then maybe I'm like, okay, I don't like it anymore. It doesn't, fit my vibe, whatever. So I definitely want to have her, Tracy, on to talk about laser tattoo removal, because it's more common than you think, and it's not as painful as you think. I mean, it's obviously not comfortable. But I guess we as women just forget pain or something. I guess that's why people continue to have babies over and over. We just forget pain and we keep going back. But yeah, that's been my past couple of weeks. So definitely go back and check out all those podcasts, and stay tuned for some more interview guests coming up. And I will update y'all on my boot camp with the energy healer and my elimination diet when I have finished all of that, and we will discuss it in further detail, I guess. And until next time, that's all I have for you guys. Bye. If you want, this is just something if you've listened this far, please go to the Apple Podcast app and give me a 5-star rating if you think it's a 5-star rating, and or review, because that helps push the podcast out to other people, guys. And for real this time, until next time, bye.